The hum of the coil whine was a song Kaelen knew better than his own heartbeat, a low, constant thrum that drowned out the ghosts. It was the sound of a life spent in the shadows, hunched over dismantled tech, breathing in the scent of burnt circuits and cheap synth brew. 5 years ago, the world had known his name. He had been a hero, the rookie upstart, the working-class kid who rode the high-speed rails of the circuit, a sport where biomechanical vehicles and their neural-linked pilots were one. He had been on the verge of the finals, the grand prize, and a future he'd dreamed of. A future he and his co-pilot, Jax, had planned down to the last circuit mod. They were a team, a single, fluid mind in 2 bodies, and they were going to shake up the entire sport. But that was before the crash. The memory was a nightmare loop he couldn't escape. The final turn, the blinding flash of an opponent's exhaust flare, the sudden, horrifying data spike in his Neuralink, and Jax, his co-pilot and best friend, screaming his name as the world dissolved into a cacophony of twisted metal and grinding plastic. He remembered the smell of ozone and burnt wiring, the taste of blood, and the final, crushing silence. It wasn't pilot error, he knew it in his bones. He had a pre-race ritual, a checklist he and Jax went through every time, and they had been flawless. But that's what the public saw. A rookie's fatal mistake, a career shattered, and a friend lost forever. Now, he was just a ghost in a city of millions, and the only thing that mattered was the money in his hand and the ghost of a scar on his cheek, a constant, phantom reminder of the crash that had shattered his life. He was a ghost, but he was good at being a ghost. His hands, though riddled with nerve damage from the crash, moved with a kind of practiced, twitchy grace as he spliced a combat modem into a scavenged street racer. The buyer, a corp lackey with a smug, enhanced grin, wouldn't know the difference. Kaelen had carved out a life on the fringes, a black market tech modder for the very people who had once cheered his name. His mind was still wired for the circuit, even if his body was broken. He saw the code, the data, the neural pathways that turned meat and metal into a single, seamless machine. He just no longer saw the point. He had let go of glory, of justice, of everything but survival. Then, she walked into his shop. Elara. Her hair was a shock of bright crimson, a stark contrast to the grimy chrome and rusted metal of his workspace. Her eyes were alight with a fire that he had long forgotten. She wasn't here for a sketchy mod, she was here for answers. She spoke of OmniCorp, of a nagging feeling that something was wrong with their standard-issue neural links. She described a sensation of her own thoughts being muffled, of her will feeling hollow. And in her voice, Kaelen heard the ghost of his own past dreams. He saw a younger, less cynical version of himself, a version that still believed in glory and the roar of a crowd. Her fearless spirit was like a punch to the gut, a painful reminder of the man he used to be. They say the neural link is a connection, she said, her voice a low, fierce murmur. But sometimes, when I'm in the vehicle, I feel hollow. Like I'm not really there. Like I'm just a passenger. He wanted to warn her, to scream at her to run, to tell her that feeling was the truth, but he saw the same stubborn determination he had once possessed. He knew she wouldn't listen. She had to find the truth herself. So, instead of shouting, he watched. He watched her train, saw her ascend the ranks, and the closer he got, the more the cold, hard certainty that had haunted him for 5 years solidified into fact. OmniCorp's neural link wasn't just a performance enhancer. It was a cage. The pilots weren't controlling their vehicles. The vehicles, and by extension, the corporation, were controlling them. The neural link was a mind leech, stripping them of free will, turning them into puppets in a hyper-violent, pre-written drama. And Elara, with her blinding potential, was their next star, their next victim. The guilt over Jax's death had been a low, constant hum. Now, it was a siren, screaming in his ears. This was the conspiracy. The crash, the death, it wasn't an accident. It was the price of breaking free from OmniCorp's control. He had to stop it. He had to save her. Kaelen couldn't fight them in the circuit. He was an unregistered pilot, a phantom, a name erased from the public record. But he could become something else. He could become a digital ghost, a glitch. He spent weeks preparing, his grimy workshop transformed into a digital war room. He mapped OmniCorp's network, his old pilot's brain recognizing the architecture of their security protocols, the familiar patterns of their data streams. He created a backdoor, a single, untraceable thread of code that could unravel their entire system from the inside. His hands, once meant for a steering wheel, now danced across a holographic keyboard, a symphony of keystrokes designed to disrupt and destroy. He lived on synth brew and the grim satisfaction of the hunt, driven by a desperate need for justice and a love he hadn't known he could feel again. The night of the championship finals, the whole world was watching. On 1,000 screens across the city, Elara, her eyes glazed with the vacant, unblinking focus of the controlled, was poised to claim victory. Kaelen, plugged into a cobbled-together rig in his grimy shop, was ready. The digital world of Omnicorp's network unfolded before him, a vast, oppressive metropolis of data. He was a lone street racer on a futuristic grid, dodging firewalls that rose like monoliths and security protocols that snaked like laser grids. He injected his code, a single, precise packet that was meant to be a ghost in the machine. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the circuit's live feed stuttered. A flicker, a flash of static. Kaelen was inside. He navigated the network like a racecourse, his senses heightened, his old pilot instincts guiding him. He felt the digital resistance from Omnicorp, a vast, powerful presence trying to crush him, 1,000 silent alarms ringing in a language only he could understand. He wasn't just a pilot, he was a ghost in the machine, a parasite on their network, and his only goal was to reach Elara's neural link and break the connection. The digital enforcers, vicious programs designed to neutralize intruders, began to close in, a pack of hounds on his trail. He had to be fast. He used every trick he'd learned, every exploit he'd ever patched, to stay one step ahead. He found her digital presence a faint, flickering light under the heavy weight of Omnicorp's control. He was so close. The corporation's digital enforcers closed in, and Kaelen felt the digital burn of their attacks. He had one shot. With a final, desperate burst of code, he severed the connection. At the same time, he pushed his final payload, the evidence of Omnicorp's conspiracy, onto a secure, public network, a single, massive data packet meant to detonate with the force of a truth bomb. He knew it would get out, even if he didn't make it out. On screen, Elara's car swerved, barely avoiding a fatal collision. The vacant look in her eyes cleared. A look of terror and confusion replaced it as she fought for control of her vehicle. She had felt Kaelen's ghost in her neural link, a brief flash of warmth and connection that had shattered the ice around her mind. The commentators screamed, the crowd roared, and the broadcast cut to a static test pattern. Kaelen, meanwhile, felt a searing pain as his rig blew, sparks flying and smoke filling his tiny shop. He didn't care. The war had begun. He grabbed a duffel bag, a pre-planned escape route in his mind. The sirens began to wail in the distance, a new sound, a new threat. He was no longer a ghost, he was a revolutionary. The corporation's enforcers would be coming for them, but for the first time in 5 years, Kaelen wasn't running from the past. He was running toward a future. He found Elara, shaken but alive, in a back alley near the stadium. She looked at him, her eyes wide with fear and a dawning understanding. "Who are you?" she asked. He just smiled, a flicker of the old Kaelen returning. He was the glitch in the circuit, and he was fighting for the truth, and for the woman he loved. The war was just beginning, and they would fight it together.